How's everybody doing? Great to be learning with you on a Tuesday, Yom Shlishi. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house? Stephen in New Hampshire, Hood in South Carolina, Melissa in Great Neck, Bella in Florida, Joe in the Inland Empire, Shandor in the Bronx, Guy in Ohio, Bella in Texas, John in Maine, Sharon in New Jersey, Chaim in Florida, Alan in New York City, Aoife in Florida, Ella in Southern California, Norm in the SoCal desert, 29 Palms. Great to have you with us. Welcome, everybody. Very colorful page today. Thought about making it a key daf. It wasn't quite a key daf, but some wonderful passages and some famous ones. Let's get into it. We picked this up on page 108b. We've been talking, about some more people who don't have a share in the world to come. This is Mishna number 2 in chapter 11 of Tractate Sanhedrin, the 24th volume of the Talmud. Our daf tonight is page 109. We pick it up on 108b, about 2/3 of the way down. The sages taught. 3 violated that directive and engaged in intercourse. We were talking about that the generation of the flood that was destroyed by the flood, they don't have a share in the world to come. And once we were talking about the flood, we started talking about Noah. We finished yesterday talking about in Hebrew, Noach. And was he righteous? Was he a righteous man in any generation, or just a righteous man among the people who are so evil that none of them have a place in the world to come? We saw that was a debate between Rabbi Yochanan, who says, in any other generation, he would not be considered so righteous. And Reish Lakish says, somebody who managed to be righteous when surrounded by so much evil, how much more righteous would he be if he didn't have to contend with all that evil? Okay, now we're looking at some other aspects of the story of the flood and the occupants of the ark. So the sages taught 3 violated that directive and engaged in intercourse while they were in the ark. Yesterday we learned that it was prohibited to have relations in the ark. The humans were certainly not doing it. What about the animals? Sounds like only 3 violated the directive and they engaged in intercourse while in the ark, and all of them were punished for doing so. And they are the dog, the raven, and Ham, the son of Noach. So the dog was punished in that it is bound, right? It became a servant of the humans and is typically on a chain or a leash. The raven was punished in that it spits, and Ham was afflicted in that his skin turned black. Now, with regard to the verse, and he sent forth the dove from him to see if the waters abated, Genesis 8:8, Rabbi Yirmiyah says, from here it is derived that the dwelling place of kosher birds in the ark was with the righteous people, as the verse emphasizes that Noach dispatched the dove from his place, right? So the kosher birds, the kosher animals, were the animals that are kosher for eating, and therefore for bringing not all animals that are kosher for eating are used for sacrifices, but all the animals that are used for sacrifices are kosher animals. So this would include the doves, the sheep, the cattle, the goats, etc. So the raven was not from the kosher animals, as we discussed yesterday, but the doves were. So with regard to the verse, quote, and in her mouth was an olive branch plucked off, the word taraf, from Genesis 8:11, right? The dove that brought back a sign that the waters of the flood had receded enough, the trees were showing. So the dove came with an olive branch in its mouth. And of course, that has become a universal symbol of peace, because God said after the flood, I establish a covenant with you that I will never destroy the world again. I set my rainbow in the sky as a sign of that promise, but also this sign of hope, right? When the dove came back with the olive branch, it meant that God's anger had cooled, the waters had subsided, and we're going to get back to a normal life and rebuild the world. So, about this dove with the olive branch, what does it say? And he sent forth the dove from him to see if the waters abated. So Rabbi Yirmiyah says, from here it is derived that the dwelling place, I just read that. With regard to the verse, and in her mouth was an olive branch plucked off, taraf. So Rabbi Eliezer says, the dove said before the Holy One, blessed be he, master of the universe, may my sustenance be bitter as the olive and dependent on your hands, and not sweet as honey and dependent on the hands of flesh and blood. Wonderful teaching, right? Better to be not so rich and depend only on the Holy One above than to depend on people that you're flattering and who are going to let you down and who are not real. Everyone who's counting on somebody to solve all his problems for him will be disappointed, right? So better to have my sustenance be bitter as the olive, but dependent only on your hands, Hashem, and not sweet as honey and dependent on the hands of flesh and blood. So the Gemara asks, from where may it be inferred that this word, taraf, is a term that indicates sustenance? And the Gemara answers, it is inferred from that which is written, feed me, hatrefeni, same root, with my allotted portion, from Proverbs 30, verse 8. With regard to the verse, after their kinds, lemish pechotechem, they emerged from the ark, right? So it says when the animals came out of the ark, it says after their kind, or after their kinds, plural, they emerged from the ark. Why didn't it just say they emerged from the ark? What does it mean after their kinds, they emerged from the ark? So Rabbi Yochanan says this word, lemishpachasam, after their kinds, the animals emerged, but not themselves. As some of the animals that entered the ark died during the year, and it was their descendants who emerged. Oh, but didn't we say that they did not have relations, not the animals nor the people? They weren't, reproducing while on the ark. So what does it mean that some of them did not emerge and their children did? Well, either some of the animals entered pregnant, or there's a note here that what we're talking about is insects. There were insects on the ark, and some insects don't live for a year. Right, so those were allowed to reproduce so that their descendants come out. Or a different interpretation is that, none of them ate very much during these many months on the ark, almost a year. So they were all, skinny and weakened when they came off. And that's what we mean by after their kind, but not they themselves. Rav Hana Bar Bizna says, Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, said to Shem, the great son of Noach. So interesting conversation, because Abraham was 10 generations after Noach. But sounds like the son of Noach, Shem, lived for a very long time. And in fact, he did live for a very long time, because we also have a tradition that Isaac and Jacob went to learn, especially Jacob, went to learn in the yeshiva of Shem and Haver, the sons of Noah. So it's also possible that Abraham's servant Eliezer was able to have a conversation with Shem, the son of Noah. So it is written, not about Isaac. We don't have that tradition about Isaac. I'm sorry, I just said that. I don't know if Isaac studied with Shem and Haver, but his son, Jacob, for sure did, according to the Midrash. In fact, and he spent 14 years there, is the tradition that we have, learning with Shem and Haver after he left Isaac's home. That's why I figured Isaac at least knew about Shem and Haver, because that's where Jacob went to. So it is written, after their kinds they emerged from the ark, right? So Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, said to Shem the Great, the son of Noah, that it is written, quote, after their kinds they emerged from the ark, indicating that different types of animals were not intermingled while they were in the ark. So where were you and what did you do to care for them while they were in the ark, that they were all provided for and they weren't intermingling with each other? How did you care for, a pair of animals from every species on earth? How did you manage that? Is what Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, is asking Shem, the son of Noah. So Shem said to him, we experienced great suffering in the ark, caring for the animals. Where there was a certain creature that one typically feeds during the day, we fed it during the day. And where there was a creature that one typically feeds at night, we fed it at night. And with regard to that chameleon, that's how it's translated here. Some say this is actually a small bird. My father did not know what it eats. One day, my father was sitting and peeling a pomegranate, and a worm fell from it, and the chameleon ate it. And from that point forward, my father would knead bran with water, and when it became overrun with worms, the chameleon would eat it. So the point is that they were working day and night, all day long, just feeding the animals. Now, with regard to the lion, a fever sustained it, since when it suffered from a fever, it did not need to eat, right? Question, what were the carnivore animals eating while they weren't there that year? And this is an answer for all of them. They weren't eating the kosher animals. They weren't eating, the animals that would normally be prey for these animals. They were fasting, and they were able to do that because it was like they had a fever. As Rav said, no fewer than 6 days and no more than 12 days, fever sustains a person. He need not eat, and he is sustained from his own fats. Right? Starve a cold, feed a fever. You've heard that saying. But often when people have a fever, they're just not hungry. And, you're able to survive. It would be good if you could eat, but it's like they didn't have intravenous feeding. So if a person just refused to eat, he was saying, don't freak out. When they get better, they'll eat. Shem continued with regard to the phoenix, translation of the word avarshina. My father found it lying in its compartment on the side of the ark, and he said to the bird, do you not want food? And the bird said to him, I saw that you were busy, and I said I would not trouble you by requesting food. And Noah said to the bird, may it be God's will that you shall not die. And through that bird, the verse was fulfilled, as it is stated from Job 29:18. And I said, I shall die in my nest, and I shall multiply my days as the phoenix. Right, so the phoenix, which is maybe something we associate with mythology from other cultures, actually is accounted for. It's mentioned in the book of Job, and we have an understanding, according to the oral tradition, that the phoenix is what you have heard, right? It is a bird that can live for 1,000 years and then returns to its nest. It goes on fire, and then it is reborn, right? So out of the ashes is the rebirth of the phoenix. That's actually in Jewish literature as well. Rav Chana Bar Levaye, Rav Chana Bar Levaye says that Shem the Great said to Eliezer, right? Eliezer had a question for Shem, the son of Noah. Now Shem has a question for Eliezer. When the 4 kings of the east and the west came upon you to wage war, what did you do? Right? So Abraham went to rescue his nephew Lot who was taken prisoner in the war of the 4 kings versus the 5 kings, which involved Sodom, where Lot was living. So Eliezer said to him, the Holy One, blessed be he, brought Abraham and placed him to his right. And we would throw dust, and it became swords. And we threw straw, and it became arrows. As it is stated, a psalm of David, the Lord says to my master, sit to my right until I make your enemies your footstool. That's Psalm 110, verse 1. And it is written, who has raised up one from the east at whose steps victory attends? He gives nations before him and makes him rule over kings. His sword makes them as the dust, his bow as driven straw. From Isaiah 41:2. Right? So Abraham went to rescue his nephew Lot and was able to fight against great armies. Abraham had some men. He had, I think, 300 men with him. But he was up against an army of thousands. How was he able to succeed? Obviously, it was a miracle. He had the help of Hashem, of God. And what form did that take? So according to Eliezer, it wasn't just that, God stepped in and fought for him. Abraham and his men had to make an effort. They were miraculously assisted, but it wasn't that they sat there and did nothing. Okay, they threw dirt and it became swords. They threw straw and it became arrows. But we can learn for this, even when you're up against great odds, first of all, don't become paralyzed and do nothing. Do what you can, right? It's called doing your hishtadlus. Do what it is possible for you to do, and then leave the rest to God. And if you're destined to win, you will receive heavenly assistance. But you've got to do your part, as Abraham did. And then he was miraculously assisted. And now that we're talking about Abraham and this miraculous assistance that he received in that war with miraculous weapons, the Gemara relates another story that touches on this story of Abraham in that war. And this is about Nachum of Gamzu, also known as Gamzu Latova, right? Gamzu Latova, which means, so Nachum Ish Gamzu, right? So Nachum is a man from Gamzu, or that says Gamzu. Why? Because he says Gamzu Latova, meaning this too is for the best. And this man, Nachum, was the eternal, man at peace. No matter what happened, he was okay with it. He says, okay, this is for the best. Doesn't mean he was lazy. Doesn't mean that he lacked backbone. Quite the contrary. He was a great sage and somebody who was accustomed to have miracles happen around him because his faith was so great. He certainly did his ishtadlus, but after doing his ishtadlus, we can control what we do. We can control the work that we do. We can't control the outcome. And he was perfectly willing to trust God no matter what the outcome was. And so he was famous for saying, Gamzu Latova. This too is for the best. So where is the great story about him that illustrates this trait, this wonderful trait of his? One day, Nachum of Gamzu was accustomed that in response to any circumstance that arose in his regard, he would say, Gamzu Latova, this too is for the best. One day, the Jewish people sought to send a gift, doron, to the emperor. So this is the emperor of Rome. And they said, with whom shall we send the gift? And they decided, we will send it with Nachum of Gamzu, as he is experienced in miracles. Now we're on page 109a. When he reached a certain lodging, he sought to sleep there. The residents of that lodging said to him, what do you have with you? And Nachum said to them, I am taking the head tax to the emperor. Now, he didn't say I'm taking a gift, right? Because that would just be inviting them to steal it. He said, I'm taking the head tax of the emperor, which is like, you're going to steal the emperor's taxes. That would be quite a brazen thief. Sadly, he was among such brazen thieves. They rose in the night, opened his chest, and took everything that was in it. And then they filled the chest with dirt. He didn't know. When he arrived there in Rome, earth was discovered in the chest that he was bringing as a gift to the emperor. The emperor said, the Jews are mocking me. by giving me this gift. They took Nachum out to kill him. Nachum said, Gamzu l'tova. This too is for the best. That's emunah. Emunah b'tachon, faith and trust in God. Elijah the prophet came and appeared to them as one of Nachum's traveling party. And Elijah said to them, perhaps this earth in the chest is from the earth of Abraham our forefather, who would throw dust and it became swords, and he would throw straw and it became arrows, like the story we just heard. Well, they examined the chest and they discovered that it was indeed the dust of Abraham, and that it had this quality, right? They could throw it and it would become swords. So there was a province that the Romans were unable to conquer. They brought this earth there and they threw some of this earth upon that province and they conquered it. In appreciation for the gift that Nachum of Gamzu had brought on behalf of the Jewish people, they brought him into the Roman treasury and they said, take whatever you want. He filled his chest with gold. When he returned to that lodging, those residents said to him, what did you bring to the king's palace? And Nachum said to them, what I took from here, I brought to there. Now they know that he took dirt in the chest because they put it there. But he came back with a chest full of gold that he received in exchange for the dirt that was in the chest. So the residents concluded that the earth with which they had filled the chest must have miraculous properties. So they took earth and they brought it to the emperor. And once the Romans discovered that the earth was ineffective in battle, they executed those residents. So the thieves got what was coming to them, because what they had done would have easily resulted in the death of Gamzu l'tova. But his faith saved him, and their robbery killed them. The Mishna teaches, right back to our Mishnah, Mishnah number 2 here in chapter 11, that members of the generation of the dispersion, the generation that built the Tower of Babel, they have no share in the world to come. So the Gemara asks, what sin did they perform? Their sin is not explicitly delineated in the Torah. The school of Rabbi Shela says that the builders of the Tower of Babel said, we will build a tower and ascend to heaven, and we will strike it with axes so that its waters will flow. They laughed at this explanation in the West, meaning in Israel, and asked if that was their objective, let them build a tower on a mountain. Why did they build it specifically in a valley? Rather, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Eliezer says they divided into 3 factions. One faction said, let us ascend to the top of the tower and live there. And the second faction said, let us ascend to the top of the tower and engage in idol worship. And the third faction said, let us ascend to the top of the tower and wage war against heaven. Now, with regard to that faction that said, let us ascend to the top of the tower and live there, God dispersed them. And the faction that said, let us ascend to the top of the tower and wage war, they were turned into apes and spirits and demons and female demons. And with regard to that faction that said, let us ascend to the top of the tower and engage in idol worship, it is written, because there the Lord confounded the language of all the earth. Right? This is where he dispersed them and changed it so that instead of everyone speaking one language, now 70 languages were introduced into the world. And so people could never all, work together and ruin themselves by all becoming corrupted and all being involved in the same sin, which would lead God to destroy the whole world again. Better, they should all be divided, and if any particular group engages in some terrible sin, they might need to be wiped out, like the people of Sodom, but the rest of the world wouldn't be involved in that. Rabbi Yochanan says, the uppermost, confounded the earth. And it is taught in a Baraisa. The Rabbi Nassan says, all of those factions intended to build the tower for the sake of idol worship. And it is written here, and let us make a name for us. And it is written there, and make no mention of the name of other gods. Exodus 23:13. So just as there the connotation of name is idol worship, so too here the connotation of name is idol worship. Rabbi Yochanan says, the uppermost third of the tower was burned. The lowermost third of the tower was swallowed into the earth, and the middle third remained intact. Rav says the atmosphere of the tower causes forgetfulness. Anyone who goes there forgets what he has learned. As a result of the building of the tower, forgetting was introduced into the world. Right? Before that, people had perfect memories. Rav Yosef says Babel and the adjacent place, Bursif, are each a bad omen for Torah, i.e. they cause one to forget his knowledge. And the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of Bursif? And Rabbi Asi says it is an abbreviation of empty pit, Bor Shafi. Now this is interesting because this is the Talmud Bavli that we're reading. So these sages, who are always constantly talking about Rav Asi, Rav Ashi, Shmuel, Abba, Rabba, Abba Shaul, Rabba, all these people, Abaye, Rav Yosef, they were all living in Babel. Here it says that, Babel is a place where you forget your Torah. I think it's a good reminder that they're saying to each other, Torah will be easily forgotten unless you labor in it constantly. The Mishna teaches the people of Sodom have no share in the world to come. So the sages taught the people of Sodom have no share in the world to come, as it is stated, and the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Exceedingly is how we're translating me'od. Often we just say as very. Tov is good. Tov me'od is very good, right? Or you're supposed to love the Lord your God with all your soul, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your me'odecha, right? Me'odecha, which normally we translate as your resources or your might, but really means your veriness, your exceedingliness. Okay, so what's going on here? This exceedingly. As it is stated, the men of Sodom were wicked and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Wicked indicates in this world. Sinners indicates from the world to come, right? They were destroyed in this world and they will have no share in the world to come. Rav Yehuda says wicked is referring to sins they committed with their bodies. And the word sinners is referring to sins they committed with their money. Wicked is referring to sins they committed with their bodies, as it is written with regard to Joseph and the wife of Potiphar. And how can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And sinners, this is referring to sins they committed with their money, as it is written, and your eye is wicked against your poor brother, and you give him nothing, for it shall be reckoned to you as a sin. If you don't take care of the poor, if you don't give to charity, it is reckoned not just as a missed opportunity to do a mitzvah, but it's an aveira. You have to give money to charity. Otherwise, it's a sin. Before the Lord, this is referring to blessing. That's, of course, a euphemism for cursing the name of God. Exceedingly, meod. This means that they had intent and they sinned and they did not sin unwittingly or driven by lust. They knew exactly what they were doing. It was taught in a baraisa, wicked, this is referring to sins they committed with their money, and sinners is referring to sins they committed with their bodies. Wicked is referring to sins they committed with their money, as it is written, and your eye is wicked against your poor brother, and you give him nothing. Sinners, this is referring to sins they committed with their bodies, as it is written with regard to Joseph and the wife of Potiphar, and sin against God. Before the Lord, this is referring to blessing, a euphemism for cursing. Exceedingly, me'od, this is referring to bloodshed, as it is stated. Moreover, Menashe, King Menashe, that we've learned quite a bit about, shed very much blood, very, me'od. The sages taught that people of Sodom became haughty and sinned due only to the excessive goodness that the Holy One, blessed be He, bestowed upon them. Now we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on Sodom and what it was actually like to live there. Why did these people end up becoming so wicked that in the end they had to be destroyed, them and all their city, and such a conflagration that still there's nothing there, right? This became the site of the Dead Sea. Nothing grows there, right? Sulfurous salt, fire from heaven. What happened? How did these people become so evil? Well, it started out that they were the most blessed people on earth. They lived in the best neighborhood on earth. They lucked out. The place where they found themselves living was the most perfect, physically speaking, paradise on earth. They had it all. Perfect weather, fertile land, and literally gold in the streets, right? The dust of the road was gold dust. And that kind of wealth corrupted and destroyed them. It was because of the goodness that the Holy One bestowed upon them. And what is written concerning them, indicating that it was so good? Quote, as for the earth, out of it comes bread, and underneath it is turned up as it were by fire. Its stones are the place of sapphires, and it has dust of gold. The path no bird of prey knows, neither has the falcon's eye seen it. The proud beasts have not trodden it, nor has the lion passed thereby. These verses are from Job 28, verses 5 through 8, but it refers, our sages are telling us, to Sodom. The reference is to the city of Sodom, which was later overturned, as it is stated thereafter. God, he puts forth his hand upon the flinty rock, he overturns the mountains by the roots. The people of Sodom said, since we live in a land from which bread comes and has the dust of gold, we have everything that we need. Right? Should have been an incredible recipe for contentment and generosity and largesse. But what did they interpret it as? We have everything we need. Why do we need travelers to come through here, as they come only to take away our property? Come, let us cause the proper treatment of travelers to be forgotten from our land. As it is stated, Job 28:4, he breaks open a watercourse in a place far from inhabitants, forgotten by pedestrians. They are dried up. They have moved away from men. The people of Sodom didn't want anyone coming and moving in and staying here. So they rejected everybody, absolutely everybody, and made it untenable for anyone to come and join them because they passed such horrible laws against hospitality to strangers. Rava taught, what is the meaning of that which is written? How long will you seek to overwhelm a man? You will all be murdered like a leaning wall or a tottering fence. Psalm 62. And this teaches that the people of Sodom set their sights on property owners. They would take one and place him alongside an inclined flimsy wall that was about to fall and push it upon him to kill him. And then they would come and take his property. Not only strangers they didn't allow there, they even murdered each other so that each one would have more property. Rava taught, what is the meaning of that which is written? In the dark they dig through houses, by day they shut themselves up, they know not the light. From Job 24, this teaches that they would set their sights on property owners. They would take one and they would give him balsam, whose smell diffuses, and the property owner would place it in his treasury. And in the evening, the people of Sodom would come and sniff it out like a dog and discover the location of these property owners and of his treasury. As it is stated, they return at evening, they howl like a dog and go around the city, from Psalm 59. And after discovering the location, they would come and dig there and they would take that man's property. And they lie at night naked without clothing, and they have no covering in the cold. From Job 24:7. And likewise, they drive away the donkey of the fatherless. They take the widow's ox as a pledge. And they trespass. They violently steal flocks and graze them. For he is brought to the grave, and watch is kept over his tomb. All these verses are very negative descriptions of the people of Sodom. Rabbi Yosef taught in Sippori the methods that the people of Sodom would use to steal from their guests and from each other. Right? He actually taught the tradition that he had received about how the people of Sodom actually broke in and stole from each other. And Rabbi Yosef was such a, he was such a pure soul that he never occurred to him that if he was just teaching something that happened in history, how these wicked people stole from each other and then they were all destroyed, that people in his time would actually hear those lessons and say, oh, good method for stealing. I'm going to try that. Didn't occur to him that such a thing could happen. But that's what happened. That night, 300 tunnels were excavated in Sippori in order to employ those methods. And homeowners came and harassed him. They said to him, you have given away for thieves to steal, right? You've taught people how to steal, and they've been stealing from us. And Rabbi Yosef said to them, did I know that thieves would come as a result of my lecture? It never occurred to him. So the Gemara relates, many years later when Rabbi Yosef died, the gutters of Sippori miraculously overflowed with blood as a sign of his death. And the note explains that because Rabbi Yosef taught that lecture and then a lot of thieves showed up and were stealing from, the locals in Sippori, they all blamed Rabbi Yosef for it. And so they didn't accord him the proper respect of one of the great sages of the generation. And when he died, they weren't even going to give him like a proper send-off, a proper burial. I mean, the kind of burial that a great sage deserves. They weren't going to do it. And so then a miracle was performed that droplets of blood came from heaven and then multiplied in the gutters. And people said, oh, yeah, we've mistreated Rabbi Yosef. It wasn't his fault. He didn't intend to harm us. And we need to give him a proper burial. And they did. The people of Sodom would say, anyone who has one ox shall herd the city's oxen for 1 day. Anyone who does not have any oxen shall herd the city's oxen for 2 days. Right? A bunch of laws make no sense. The Gemara relates they gave oxen to a certain orphan, son of a widow, to herd, and he went and took them and killed them. And the orphan said to the people of Sodom, well, let anyone who has one ox take one hide, and let anyone who has no oxen can take 2 hides. And the people of Sodom said to him, what are you talking about? What's the reason for this? And the orphan said to them, the ultimate rule is parallel to the initial rule. Just as the initial rule is anyone who has one ox shall herd all the city's animals for 1 day, but anyone who has no oxen shall herd all of the city's people's oxen for 2 days. Well, so too. Now the ultimate rule is let anyone who has one ox take one hide, and let anyone who has no oxen take 2 hides. Furthermore, they declared in Sodom, we are on page 109b, let one who crosses on a ferry give 1 dinar as payment. Let one who does not cross on a ferry, but rather walks through the river and gets wet, pay 2 dinars. They want to make the place as inhospitable as possible. These rules, the purpose of them is to turn away visitors. In addition, when there was anyone who had a row of bricks, each and every one of the people of Sodom would come and take 1 brick and say to him, hey, I'm only taking 1. And you are certainly not particular about so inconsequential an item as a single brick, but they would do this until no bricks remained. And when there was anyone who would cast garlic or onions to dry, each and every one of the people of Sodom would come and take 1 and say to him, hey, I only took 1 garlic or 1 onion. And they would do this until none remained of his supply, right? They just stripped everyone bare, and everybody who lived there was in on it. There were 4 judges in Sodom, and they were named for their actions. Shakrai, meaning liar. Shakrurai, meaning habitual liar. Zephai, a forger. And Matzlai Dina, a perverter of justice. And these were the judgments that they rendered. In a case of one who strikes the wife of another and causes her to miscarry, classic case in the Torah where you now owe damages to that family. But in Sodom, they would say to the woman's husband, give the woman to the man who hit her so that she will be impregnated for you again. In a case of one who severed the ear of another person's donkey, they would say to the owner of the donkey, give the donkey to the one who caused the damage until the ear grows back. Obviously, ears don't grow back. In the case of one who wounded another person, they would say to the injured party, give the one who wounded you a fee as he let your blood. Right? I punch you in the face and draw blood. You owe me money because I performed the service of letting blood for you. And they instituted an ordinance. One who crossed the river on a ferry gives 4 dinars, and one who crossed the river on water, just walking through the water, gives 8 dinars. One time a certain launderer came and arrived there, and the people of Sodom said to him, give 4 dinars as payment for the ferry. He said to them, I crossed in the water. They said to him, well, if so, give 8 dinars as you crossed through the water. Well, he did not pay. And so they struck him and they wounded him. He came before the judge to seek compensation. The judge said to him, give your assailant a fee, as he was a bloodletter for you, and pay the 8 dinars because you crossed the river by walking through the water. Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, came to that place. Right? So now Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, is sort of used here as a character of tremendous wisdom and cunning, who knew how to handle fiends, like these. So Eliezer, servant of Abraham, happened to come there, and they wounded him. He came before the local judge to seek compensation. The judge said to him, give money to your assailant as he performed the service of letting your blood. So what did Eliezer do? He took a stone and he wounded the judge. And the judge said, what is this? And Eliezer said to him, well, the fee that you owe me for letting your blood you can collect it, give it to that person, whose blood, who let my blood, and my money will remain where it remains. Right? He outsmarted them. And the Gemara continues to discuss the sins of the people of Sodom. They had beds on which they would lay their guests when guests dared to come there. But when a guest was longer than the bed, they cut off his feet. And when a guest was shorter than the bed, they would put him on the rack and stretch him. Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, happened to come there. They said to him, "Come lie in the bed." He said to them, "Yeah, I took a vow that since the day my mother died, I don't lie on a bed." He figured it out. When a poor person would happen to come to Sodom, each and every person would give him 1 dinar. Sounds like they're very generous people, right? But the name of every giver was written on the dinar. And they would not give or sell bread to this person, no matter what he offered. And so he could not spend the money. And eventually he would die of hunger. And when he would die, each and every person would come and take back his dinar. And this is what the people of Sodom stipulated among themselves. Whoever invites a man to a wedding, his cloak will be removed, right? You cannot invite people from outside of Sodom to a wedding that you're throwing because we don't have hospitality in Sodom. People will want to come and live with us and share our amazing blessings, all this, feast on the land, and we don't want it, right? So no hospitality allowed. If you invite outsiders to a wedding, we're going to take your clothes away, you the host. So there was this wedding, and Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, arrived there, and they did not give him bread. When he sought to dine, Eliezer came and sat at the end behind everyone, and they said to him, "Who invited you here?" And he said to the one sitting next to him, "You invited me." Well, that man said to himself, "Perhaps they will hear that I invited him, and they will take away my garment that is on my back." So, so the one who sat next to him took it. So in other words, so this one, the one at the end of the line said to Eliezer, "Who invited you?" He said, "You invited me." And the guy thinks, wait, if somebody overhears that, they're going to take my coat. So he picked up with his coat and ran off. And so then Eliezer moved down the bench 1 spot. And likewise, Eliezer did the same for all of them until they all left to keep their own cloaks. Nobody wanted to be the one that invited him. And once they were all gone, he ate a good meal. There was a young woman who would take bread out to the poor people in a pitcher, so the people of Sodom would not see it. But the matter was revealed, and they smeared her with honey and positioned her on the wall of the city, and the hornets came and consumed her. And that is the meaning of that which is written. And the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, Rabbah. Genesis 18:20. And Rav Yehuda says that Rav says Rabbah, this word great, is an allusion to the matter of this young woman, Riva, who was killed for her act of kindness. And it is due to that sin that the fate of the people of Sodom was sealed. They committed so many sins for so many centuries or decades or whatever it was, but still, the city was not overturned and all of them killed until they murdered a woman for feeding the poor. And then that was it. God had enough. The Mishnah teaches, back to our Mishnah, who doesn't have a place in the world to come, the spies who spread an evil report after their visit to the promised land when they, came back, and the people freaked out because they said it's a beautiful land. Now we're talking about Israel, but it's inhabited by giants who will defeat us. The people panicked. God got really angry with them for panicking since God was taking care of everything. And he said, you are the generation that will perish in the desert, and your children will be the ones to go up and occupy the promised land. So we already talked about what we're going to talk about, is it possible that the whole generation doesn't have a place in the world to come? Probably not. But certainly the spies who brought that evil report and caused everyone to freak out and lose trust in God, they lose their place in the world to come. They have no share in the world to come, as it is stated. And those men who spread the evil report about the land died by plague before the Lord. And died indicates in this world, by plague indicates for the world to come. The members of the assembly of Korach have no share in the world to come. As it is stated, this was the rebellion against Moses, led by his cousin, Korach, a fellow Levite. As it is stated, and the earth closed upon them, Numbers 16:33. meaning in this world, and also, and they perished from among the assembly, right? Their death is recounted twice in Numbers 16:33, twice when the verse continues. And so the earth closed upon them. This is in this world, and they perished from among the assembly, meaning in the world to come. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer says, about the assembly of Korach, the verse states, the Lord kills and makes alive. He lowers to the grave and raises, from 1 Samuel 2:6. So according to Rabbi Eliezer, this indicates that the assembly of Korach has a share in the world to come. They died, the earth swallowed them up, they died a terrible death, and who knows how much time they spent in Gehenna, but they did not lose their share in the world to come. Their death and subsequent punishment made an atonement for them, and they were able to enter the world to come. The sages taught in a Baraisa, the members of the assembly of Korach have no share in the world to come. As it is stated, the earth closed upon them, meaning in this world, and also they perished from among the assembly, meaning in the world to come. This is the statement of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says, although it says that they perished, they are like a lost item that is sought, ultimately found, and rehabilitated. As it is stated, I have gone astray like a lost sheep. Seek out your servant, for I do not forget your mitzvahs. Right? They did have some good deeds to their name. They did have some mitzvahs that they performed and fulfilled their obligations, and that would be enough to save them and keep, restore to them their place in the world to come. Apropos Korach, the Gemara proceeds to interpret the verses written concerning him personally. And Korach, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohas, son of Levi, right? These are descendants of Levi, one of the 12 sons of Jacob. This is my family. I'm a Levite. So about him, Korach, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohas, the son of Levi, he took, Vayikach, Numbers 16:1. So took, Vayikach. Reish Lakish says he purchased, lakach, a bad acquisition for himself. As when it says he took, what does it mean he took? He took a wife, right? So the question is, what did, now they're going to talk about that Korach, when he acquired a wife for himself, he made a bad purchase. Not good. Lady Korach, reminiscent of Lady Macbeth, as we shall see. He made a bad acquisition for himself, as through his actions, he drove himself from the world. Korach alludes to the fact that because of him, a void, Korcha, was created in the children of Israel. Son of Izhar is referring to a son who incited the wrath of the entire world upon him, like the heat of the afternoon, so Harayim. Son of Kohas, these are all descriptions about his ancestors, but actually their names are being used homiletically to teach something about Korach himself. This is referring to a son who blunted, hikha, the teeth of his parents, i.e. he shamed them with his conduct. Son of Levi, this is referring to a son who became an escort, Leviah, in Gehenna. So the Gemara asks, well, if Korach's lineage is being listed here and interpreted disparagingly, why did the Torah also not include son of Yaakov, right? Levi was a son of Yaakov. So why not trace Korach's ancestry all the way back to Yaakov and interpret it a son who contorted She'akav himself until he reached Gehenna? So Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak says, Jacob, right, Yaakov, prayed for mercy for himself that his name would not be included in the lineage of Korach. As it is stated, this is Yaakov speaking on his deathbed when he's blessing his sons who would become the 12 tribes. So what does he say about his sons? Well, Shimon and Levi, those were the ones in the matter of Dinah, the rape of Dinah, and the subsequent, killing of all of the men of the town of Shechem, which was done by Shimon and Levi. And Jacob did not think that was the right thing to do, never forgave them for it, and mentioned it on his own deathbed. So here he's talking about that in those blessings to Shimon and Levi, which includes Levi. So therefore he says, let my soul not come into their counsel. And here he's referring to the spies. That would happen generations later. Jacob prayed that his name would not be mentioned in their regard. And to their assembly, let my honor not be united. And this is referring to the assembly of Korach. The Gemara proceeds to interpret the names of the cohorts of Korach. So Dasan and Aviram, these are the sons of Eliav, and On, the son of Pelas, the sons of Reuven. Dasan is one who violated the precepts, dat, of God. Aviram is one who braced Iber himself from repenting, and On indicates one who sat in acute mourning, aninus, over the sin that he committed, and he repented and was spared. Pelas is one for whom wonders, pelaot, were performed. Son of Reuven is a son who saw and understood Ra v'heaven, the nature of what was transpiring, and repented. In other words, in this group that Korach led in a rebellion against Moses, there were several people. One of them, or two of them, said, midstream, yeah, this is not a good idea. And so they were not present at the end when Korach and his cohorts, the earth opened up and swallowed them up. How did that happen? Rav says, On, the son of Pelas, did not repent on his own. It wasn't that he figured out that he should get out of this ill-fated rebellion. Rather, his wife saved him. She said to him, what is the difference to you? If this master is the great one, if this master, meaning Moses, is the great one, you are the student. And if that one is the great one, meaning Korach, you're still the student, right? Whether Korach or Moses is in charge of the encampment, you're not going to be in charge. You're still going to be a servant. So if this guy Korach, is successful in his rebellion, so what really changed for you? Then you're a servant of Korach. And if Korach is unsuccessful, and the mutineers, the rebels are put down and killed and punished and killed, where are you going to be then? This is a terrible idea. All right? And this is why we should always follow God's advice to Abraham. Listen to your wife as long as you have a righteous wife, as we shall see. So she said to him, right, what does it matter to you? If this master is a great one, you're a student. If that master is a great one, you are the student. Why are you involving yourself in this matter? On said to her, what shall I do? I was one of those who took counsel, and I took an oath with them that I would be with them. And she said to him, I know that the entire assembly is holy, as it is written, for all the assembly is holy. Numbers 16:3. And they observe the restrictions of modesty. So she said to him, sit, and I will save you. She gave him wine to drink and caused him to become drunk, and she laid him on a bed inside their tent. And then she sat at the entrance of the tent and exposed her hair as though she were bathing. So anyone who came and saw her stepped back. It was a holy congregation. And in the meantime, the assembly of Korach was swallowed into the ground, and On, the son of Pelas, was spared. Right? She understood that not only she had to convince him not to go with Korach, but she also had to act as a barrier so that they wouldn't come and fetch him and he wouldn't change his mind. So she got him drunk, he passed out, and then she stood in such a way that nobody would come in the tent and bother him, and in that way she saved his life. Now we're at the page of 110A, top of page 110A. I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. Korach's wife said to him, okay, Lady Korach, like I say, similar to Lady Macbeth. Korach's wife said to him, see what Moses is doing. He's the king, and he appointed his brother the high priest, and he appointed his nephews, right, the sons of Aaron, to be the deputy priests. If teruma comes, he says, let it be for the priest. If the first tithe comes, which you as Levites take, he says, give 1/10 to the priest. And furthermore, he shears your hair and he waves you as if you are as insignificant as excrement, right? He treats you like poop. Numbers 8:5-11. As though he set his sights on your hair and wishes you to be shaven and unsightly. Korach said to her, yeah, but didn't he also do so for himself? He shaved his own hair like the rest of the Levites. And she said to him, yeah, but it's all done for his own prominence. He also said, metaphorically, let me die with the Philistines. He was willing to humiliate himself in order to humiliate you, right? This phrase, like taken totally out of context and contemporaneously, Korach lived many generations before Samson, but the concept of, Samson, once he, the whole story with Samson and Delilah, and they cut his hair, and he was taken prisoner, and they blinded him, but his hair grew back, and then, they chained him to 2 columns, and he was able to pull the columns in and destroy the whole palace with all the Philistines in it. He killed himself in the process, but it was worth it to get his revenge on all the Philistines who blinded him and imprisoned him. Right? So she, Lady Korach, is saying to Korach, yeah, maybe he shaved his own head, but he's still the king, and he makes all of you look foolish. And furthermore, she said, with regard to that which he said to you, prepare techelis for your tzitzis, right? That our ritual fringes that we wear on the corners of our garments, it has to include this thread of sky blue, known as techelis. Tzitzis are the fringes, techelis is the sky blue thread in the tzitzis. So why did he say this? Her explanation is like this. If it enters your mind, Moses, that using techelis is considered a mitzvah, okay, so take out robes that are made entirely of material colored with techelis and dress all the students of your academy in sky blue robes without tzitzis. Why could one not fulfill the mitzvah in that manner? Right, this is actually a question that in a midrash Korach posed to Moses, right, saying that these laws that you're giving us, okay, we understand don't murder, that we're going to worship God, that you can't steal, you can't bear false witness, you shouldn't commit incest. Okay. But this, this blue thread, aren't you just making this up so that you can have more power over us? I mean, for example, if I was able to get enough blue thread to make my whole garment out of techelis, would I have to put fringes on it? Wouldn't it, the tzitzis only includes 1 thread of techelis? If I make my whole garment out of techelis, do I still need the tzitzis? They were seeking to ridicule the chukim, the laws that were supra-rational, that we do them because God said so, not because they're logical. She's using that as a lever to try to mock Moses and the power structure and urge her husband to rebel against Moses. That's what's happening here. So clearly Moses must be making all this up. And this is the meaning of that which is written. The wisdom of women builds her house, Proverbs 14:1. This is referring to the wife of On, the son of Peles, who saved him. And from Proverbs 14:1, folly plucks it down with her hands. This is referring to the wife of Korach. It is written, and they arose before Moses with men from the children of Israel, 250 princes of the congregation, the elect men of the assembly, men of renown. These men were the distinctive people of the assembly, the elect men of the assembly, Keri'e Moed, and is referring to those who knew how to intercalate the years and establish the months in order to determine the time for each festival, Moed. Men of renowned, Shem. This is referring to those who had a reputation, Shem, throughout the world. And with regard to the verse, and Moses heard and he fell on his face, right, when these people challenged his authority, he didn't say to them, I'm going to whip you, I'm going to send my, guards to kill you or arrest you. He just couldn't believe that after all he'd done for the people, now there was, further problems that he's going to have his own leadership challenged by this rebellion. So, he didn't even fight with them. He just fell on his face and said, God, what is your will in this matter? If these people should have the power, let them have the power. But if not, please let me know what to do here. Moses heard and he fell on his face. And the Gemara asks, what report did he hear that elicited that reaction? And Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmani says that Rabbi Yonasan says he heard that these people who were rising up against him suspected him of adultery with a married woman. As it is stated, they were jealous of Moses in the camp, Psalm 106. And Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yitzchak says this teaches that each and every man warned his wife to distance herself from Moses and not enter into seclusion with him. As it is stated, and Moses would take the tent and pitch it outside the camp. He behaved in such a way that he should be above reproach. But when people are jealous of your power, right, they'll say and do anything and tell any lie about the leaders in order to bring him down. We'll stop there, and with God's help tomorrow, we'll continue with the story of Dasan and Abiram, who were the people, who did not get smart and leave the rebellion. These were the troublemakers of Israel, the major troublemakers. Tomorrow we'll learn about the troublemakers, Dasan and Abiram. Okay, questions. Sharon, or as Hillel said, when you come to a place where all are inhuman, you must try to be human. Is that how you're translating? In a place where there are no men, strive to be the man? Or in the place where there are no leaders, strive to be the leader? That's a very interesting translation. Very good. Bell Plummer. So the phoenix, fox in Harry Potter, has an echo of Jewish tradition. Just so. Ilanit, I do recall a midrash that directly after the binding of Isaac at 37, right, where Abraham was instructed to sacrifice his son Isaac, the tradition says Isaac was 37 at that time. He knew exactly what was going on and went along with it. Tremendous merit for Isaac as well as Abraham. Isaac at 37 went directly to Shem and Aver's academy for a couple of years prior to his marriage to Rivka at 40. Thank you, Ilanit. That's where I got the idea from. It wasn't from nowhere at all. Yes, thank you. Yitzhak also spent time in the academy of Shem and Aver. Thank you. Bill, all of these laws, it should be noted, while initially intended narrowly against strangers and travelers, this is in Sodom, became punishments also for all of the poor. And as the poor are nickeled and dimed, there are more and more and more of them as more and more of the wealth goes up and up and up, right? It becomes a society of the 1%, the 0.1%, the 0.01%. And Bill also says Sodom murders a young woman for being halfway decent. God the very next day says to Abraham, so I've decided to flatten Sodom. Just so. That's what I've got for us today. With God's help, see you tomorrow at the regular Wednesday time, 6 p.m.